So now we're going to cover socio-emotional development in middle adulthood. So what's happening right now in middle adulthood, individuals in this stage of life are somewhere between 40 to 45 years old, all the way until 60 to 65 years old. And this is a time of physical decline for an individual, but at the same time expanding or increasing responsibility. And that can be as far as job responsibility, children, and sometimes even grandchildren. So individuals at this time will have decreased energy, but more things to do, more responsibilities to take care of. So as you may recall, individuals in middle age are facing what Erikson would call generativity versus stagnation. And this is Erikson's 7th stage in his lifespan theory. Basically, middle-aged people are trying to find some way to contribute to the development of the next generation. So the word generativity means their desire to leave legacies of themselves behind or leave it to the next generation to help the children or the people younger than them. And through these legacies, adults achieve some kind of feeling of immortality. By contrast, stagnation, basically, what would happen is they would become self-absorbed if they were not able to contribute to helping the next generation, and that's when individuals basically become emotionally impoverished. So adults can guide the next generation by doing many different things. Sometimes they'll have children themselves, so they'll be parents. Maybe they'll adopt children. And that can contribute to the next generation by teaching their children, or teaching, even taking on a job of teaching, or leading, maybe leading different organizations, maybe becoming a coach for a little league team, and also volunteering. So all these things that they can do don't necessarily have to be for pay, and that could help them feel a sense of generativity, like they're helping the next generation. So there are actually many different theories on middle adulthood, but for this class we focus on Erikson's stage theory of development and also Levinson's seasons of a man's life. And basically this was completed by a psychologist named Daniel Levinson, and he reported the results of extensive interviews with middle-aged men. So he did interviews with about 40 different men, with ranging from business executives to biologists and writers, and he came up with some conclusions and what he found from these men. At the end, what he found was that men go through different stages in life. So in their 20s, this would be considered the novice phase, and that's where individuals are experiencing or going through free experimentation and testing the dream world. Then around age 28 to 33, that's when an individual will start determining their goals and what they want to do with life in their lives. Then around the 30s, an individual will start with a family and career development, and then around age 40 to 45 is the transition to middle adulthood and coming to grips with 4 different conflicts that he found that individuals experience. So one of them is being young versus being old. So it's around this time that the transition from being young to being old takes place. Individuals are no longer considered being young. So they're no longer considered young. So that's one of the things that they have to kind of come to terms with, and also being destructive versus being constructive. The third one is being masculine versus being feminine, and the fourth one is being attached to others versus being separated. So a lot of times when we think of middle adulthood, we think midlife crisis. And the 40s are a decade of reassessing and reaccording the truth about adolescence and adult years. So only a minority of adults will experience a midlife crisis. For most, midlife is actually not a crisis. There are many things that increase during this time. Many cognitive abilities are at their peak in midlife, and that includes things like verbal memory, inductive reasoning, and vocabulary. So it's around midlife when an individual's vocabulary will usually be at its best. There are individual variations in midlife. Some individuals may experience a midlife crisis in some contexts of their lives, but not others. And you'll notice that with a lot of things that we experience in life, sometimes we'll be shy in certain contexts or certain areas in our lives, and sometimes not in others. So maybe you're sitting in your class and you don't really want to talk to other people because you're feeling kind of shy, but in front of your family, you're very outgoing, you're yelling, things like that. So what may be true for some may not be true for others. In 1/3 of cases where individuals report experiencing a midlife crisis, the crisis was triggered by life events like job loss and financial problems, or health problems like illness. So people deal with life in many different ways, and personality is one of the factors that contribute to the way people react to life events. There was a major study of adult personality development that continues to be conducted by two individuals, Paul Costa and Robert McRae. They focus on what is called the Big 5 factors of personality. And that includes openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, or emotional stability. And if you'll take note that the first letter of each word creates an acronym, from these names you'll get the word ocean, and that's just an easier way for you to remember the 5 factors of personality when you're studying and things like that. And these traits are sometimes referred to as the Big 5. There's a number of research studies that point towards these factors as important dimensions of personality. So there was a longitudinal study conducted on about 500 children, and what they did was they studied them to find out about their personality, and they wanted to see how much their personality changed across their lifespan. So they followed them, these 500 children, until they reached adulthood. And some of the factors that they were looking for, which were the ones that we've already discussed, were the Big 5 factor models. So openness would be the first one, and that's kind of determining whether an individual is open to new ideas versus whether an individual is very conventional or narrow in their interests. So also whether an individual is very imaginative or whether they're more practical, and whether they're interested in variety or whether they're interested in routine and doing the same things over and over again. Also, whether they're independent or whether they're conforming and following other people. And the second factor is conscientiousness, and this is determining whether an individual is responsible and organized versus whether they're irresponsible and careless. Also, whether they're careful, disciplined, or whether they're disciplined or impulsive is another part of conscientiousness. And the third factor is extroversion. And that's whether an individual is social and talkative versus whether an individual is withdrawn and quiet. And a lot of times I find that individuals can be different in different settings, and they can also range on a spectrum. So they might not necessarily be extremely talkative, but they might meet somewhere in the middle, and they might classify themselves as mildly withdrawn or mildly sometimes quiet and sometimes talkative. Also, a part of extroversion is whether an individual is fun-loving or whether they're more somber, and also whether an individual is affectionate or whether they're more reserved. So the fourth factor is agreeableness, and that's whether an individual is trusting and good-natured versus whether they're more suspicious and ruthless, or whether they're helpful or whether they're uncooperative. And the fifth one is neuroticism, and that's whether an individual is emotionally unstable and moody versus whether they are more emotionally stable and easygoing. Also, some more things that fall into that category are whether an individual is calm or whether they're anxious, whether someone is secure or insecure, and whether someone is self-satisfied or whether they're more self-pitying. So personality traits, what some of the conclusions they found when they did this study on the big 5 factors of personality was that personality traits continue to change during the adult years and even into late adulthood. With time and age, people become better at interacting with their environment in ways that promote the stability of personality, and that's the cumulative personality model. So there's consensus among middle-aged Americans that a major component of well-being involves positive relationships with others, especially parents, spouses, and children. So now we're going to talk about love and marriage at midlife. Security, loyalty, and mutual emotional interest are more important in middle adulthood. Most married individuals are satisfied with their marriages during midlife. And divorce in midlife can be less intense than it is in early adulthood. And the reasons that people get divorced tend to be different during midlife. So some of the main reasons for middle-aged and older adults to get divorced, they kind of differ between women and men. They did a study, and they found that for women, one of the first reasons for divorce for a woman would be verbal, physical, or emotional abuse by her partner, and that happened in about 23% of divorces. And the second reason was alcohol or drug abuse. And that was found in 18% of divorces. And then the third one would be cheating. A spouse is having an affair, whatever, going outside of the marriage. And that happens about 17% of the time. So some of the reasons for men are a little bit different. Both of them involve cheating, though. But for men, the first reason is that they kind of just fell out of love for their spouse. There was no obvious problems. They just decided, I don't think I want to be married anymore. I don't think I love this person. And that happens about 17% of divorces. And the second reason would be cheating, and that occurs in 14% of divorces. And then the third one The third reason for adults to get divorced is that there's different values and lifestyles. Maybe one person is very religious and going to church every Sunday or every other day or whatever, however many times that they do that, and then the other spouse wants to do something different. Maybe they want to go to the beach, or maybe they want to go do something else on Sundays. So they have kind of a different lifestyle, and that accounts for 14% of the reasons why men want to get divorced. So a lot of times adults will have children, and many times that'll occur in young adulthood, sometimes in middle adulthood. We've already discussed some of the benefits of having children early and having children later. So a lot of times in middle adulthood, children are actually growing up, and a lot of times maybe they'll be leaving or going to college, different things like that. And parents will generally face new adjustments as a result of their children leaving. Their lives are going to be different. They're not going to have that child living with them anymore, taking up, their room, or they might not have to be cooking for them anymore, doing their laundry or whatever kind of scenario they have worked out. So a lot of times when children leave, a parent will experience what's known as an empty nest syndrome. And that's a decline in marital satisfaction after the children leave the home. And basically, that happens a lot for parents who live vicariously through their children. For most parents, however, marital satisfaction does not decline after children have left the home. Rather, for most parents, marital satisfaction actually increases during the years after child rearing. So after the child leaves home, for most parents, they can do different things that maybe they couldn't do when their child was living at home, accomplish different goals, or it's kind of like how they were before their child came into the world. And that's most of the time it's been many, many years since they've been alone without children. So nowadays, young adults tend to stay in the house for a lot longer than they used to, and a lot of times young adults will actually move back in with their parents after college, or maybe they couldn't find a job, or maybe they got married and then they got divorced and then they need a place to stay, so they're moving back in with their parents. And some individuals don't even leave home until maybe their middle adulthood, or maybe they never leave home because of whatever reason. A lot of times they can't financially support themselves. And there's been a lot of labels that have been applied and placed on these young adults who return back to their parents' home to live. And one of those labels is called boomerang kids, or B2B, back to the bedroom, because they're coming back in and they're probably going to take their old bedroom back. So that's why they've been placed with that name. So there's some advantages and disadvantages of adult children returning home. For one thing, there's loss of privacy on account of both the adult children and the parents of the adult children. And a lot of times the adult children, when they move back in with their parents, they will complain that their parents are restricting their independence. They're also complaining that their parents are cramping their sex lives. They're not allowed to listen to music as loudly as they possibly were before. And also the adult children are complaining that the parents treat them as a child. So if you look at this, you'll notice that a lot of these things are complaints that teenagers will experience and teenagers will have about their parents. And so it's kind of interesting to see that some of those same complaints are occurring in adulthood. And I mean, it has to do with the fact that they are living back with their parents, and there is kind of a discrepancy as to what rules should be followed. And the adult children are adults, but and as teenagers, they're not allowed to do a lot of things that they are as adults. But there is kind of that problem in the situation. So some of the parents' complaints include that their home has become noisy. They worry about when their children will come home. Another complaint is meal planning. So they have conflicting schedules. Maybe the adult child is coming home at a later time than the parent is home. So how are they going to have dinner or whatever, something like that? Who's going to cook the dinner? Different complaints like that. And also another parent's complaint is that they have too much responsibility for their children. And when children come back to live at home, it creates a disequilibrium within the family structure and the family system most times. So many adults will become grandparents during middle age. It's kind of more of a remote role. And grandparents can have different functions in different families. In different cultures, they might be different, and also in different situations. There's 3 types of grandparenting styles that Sandrock talks about in the Lifespan Development book. And that's the fun-seeking style grandparent is one of them. The distant figure style is another, and that type would be not very emotionally involved with the grandchildren. And then there's the formal style of grandparenting. Middle-aged adults have a lot of responsibilities. They have responsibilities for their children, responsibilities sometimes for their grandchildren, responsibilities for work, and a lot of times they've been described as what's known as the sandwich or squeeze generation or overload generation, because of all the responsibilities that they have for their young adult children, their adolescent children, and also the responsibilities that they have for their aging parents. Because as an individual comes into middle adulthood, their parents at the same time are getting older as well, and they're going through their own stage in life, and they're going through a physical decline if they are still alive. So many middle-aged adults experience considerable stress with a lot of different things, and it's just important to remember that not all adults are going to experience the same thing that other adults experience. So what would be normal for one person might not be normal for another, and that goes for midlife crisis. That goes for the big factors of personality. That goes for grandparenting styles, and marriage, and also divorce. So the next stage in life will be old age, which we will discuss later.